Assalamu alaikum everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm going to show you how to build such a liquid animated tab bar in SwiftUI. So I created a brand new project and named it liquid tab bar. Inside the content view, I added some scrollable rectangles in VStack. Nothing complicated here. If you wanna follow along, then just add some vertical scrollable items and you are good to go. Doesn't have to be same as mine. You will see why we need a scrollable view later. Let's spin the preview and start writing code. So the first thing we're gonna do is create the folder structure. So create a folder, name it custom tab bar. Inside that, create components folder. Then controllers folder, then extensions folder, and finally models folder. Then also create a SwiftUI view file named custom tab bar, which will be our tab bar view, and get rid of the live preview. Next, we need a model class for each tab item. So create a Swift file tab item inside the models folder. Create a struct, call it items, which conforms to identifiable. Add these three properties. The ID has to be of type int. You will see why later. Back to content view. There we will create a constant variable to store an array of 4 items. Make sure to start the ID from 1 and increase the value by 1. This is important because we will write logic based on their ID. And I also recommend you to use field icon for active and outline for inactive. This is only to make it look nice. Anyway, create a @state private variable for selected ID and set it to 1. Then create 3 private constant variables to store colors. For background color, set it to yellow. Then the active color, set it to blue. Finally, an inactive color, set it to black with opacity 0.2. By the way, you can choose any color you want. Now we are going to embed the scroll view in ZStack, then put our custom tab bar on top of it. As you can see, it appeared. Open custom tab bar, then add these properties to accept arguments. Then add init function. We don't need to do that and it's totally optional, but I wanted to hide arguments label for selected ID and items. Also change the variable name of active icon color and inactive icon color. Now open content view and pass these required arguments. Now inside the custom tab bar, wrap the text with VStack and add a spacer to push it all the way down to the bottom. But we can see the text has some bottom padding, so we have to ignore bottom shape area. Then remove the text and add a ZStack. Inside that, add our background color. So we need to give a frame. For that, store the device width in a variable, then add a variable bar height and set it to 56. We need to give the frame width to device width, because when we shrink it, we have to animate between the device width and shrink the bar width. Once we add the frame width and height, we can see the tab bar is very small and it goes under the shape area. To fix this, we have to add our button edge index height to bar height. Add a private @state variable button shape area, set initial value to 0. Then wrap the VStack in geometry reader. Inside the closer, we get access to geometry proxy, add on appear to VStack, then inside this closer, access button shape area index and set it to button shape area. Then change bar height to computed property and return the added value with button shape area. Let's create rest of the files. Inside the extensions folder, create view plus extension Swift file. Inside the controller folder, create time controller Swift file. Inside components folder, create two SwiftUI view file, bar item and liquid effect view. And finally a Swift file called rounded corner. Now we have to make our tab bar rounded corner. So I copied this code from Stack Overflow and paste inside rounded corner. Also paste the view extension inside this file. Now we can make the top left and right corner to rounded corner 24. So you probably know that if we want to make some complex animation, we need to use timer, and based on the timer value we can show and hide different views while animating. So what I would like to do is create a separate controller class to manage everything related to timer. So create timer controller class which conforms to observable object. Then add two published variables. One is running, which will have a boolean initial value false. So this variable will give the status if the timer is running or not. And another is time, which will give us the current timer value. Set initial value to 0.0 and both of them will be private setup. Next, create two private variables, timer, which is of type optional timer, and time interval, set it to 0.001. Create two methods, start timer and stop timer. Inside the stop timer, stop the timer and set running to false. Then inside the start timer, first we have to reset the time to initial value 0.0. Next, start the timer by calling schedule timer class method. Set the time interval and repeats to true. Then inside this closer, we get access to the value, but we don't need it. Then update the timer value. Now we also need to make sure it stopped after a certain time, so we can take a duration parameter. Then we are going to update the timer only when the timer value is less than the duration. Else call stop timer. Another thing we need to do is add another parameter listener, which is an escaping closer. Then execute it inside here. With that, our timer controller is now done. Inside custom tab bar, create a state object, private variable, timer controller and initialize it. Then after the background, we are going to add all tab items horizontally. We can use a for each loop to iterate over items and get access to each tab item. Then we can return a bar item view. Then inside bar item view, add these properties. Inside the body, add a Z stack. Now what we are going to do is stack a bunch of icons, then animate them with different duration and delay, and also show and hide them based on their timer value. We have to give this Z stack a frame because when each bar item view is tapped, they will shrink. So for that, add a property item width of type double. Open custom tab bar and add a computed property to calculate each item view width. And now pass all required arguments to bar item view constructor. Inside the bar item view, add a frame to this tag, then add the on-tab gesture and also content shape to rectangle. Then inside the Z tag, add image and show active icon. And we can see all icons appeared, but they are small. On the Z stack, set font size to 24. Create a computed property is selected to check if selected ID is equal to tab item ID. Now I'm going to store some durations for animation. You don't need to do if you don't want. This is just not to become confused. Show active icon if is selected true, else show inactive icon. Also show active and inactive icon color. Then add animation modifier, set curve to ease out with duration of first duration and the value is selected ID. Inside on tab gesture, set selected ID to this ID. And we can see we are being able to toggle selected tab item with paid animation. This is our first animation. But at this moment when we animate between active and inactive icon, we can also tap on any icon to start or reverse the animation. This is something we don't want to happen. We also don't want to show any animation when already selected tab item is tapped. So we want to make sure when the timer is not running and is selected is not true, only then we run our logic. Then we start the timer and the duration will be total duration. Leave the trailing closure empty for now. Our second icon animation is the offset animation. So open custom tab bar and create a private constant variable icon offset and set it to 100. Then pass it to bar item view and then add that property to here. Now we can just copy the image and background color and paste here. Then set offset Y to negative icon offset when is selected is true. Also the animation will be same as previous, so just copy and paste the modifier. If we toggle, we don't see any offset animation, it's just fading. So we need to add scale effect 1. Now the selected offset icon is showing all the time. We also don't want to see the reverse animation. So for that, add the computed property and check if is selected true and timer controller is running, and finally timer value is less than first duration. Then return true, else false. So after the animation modifier, add the opacity modifier and check show offset icon is true, then set 1, which means this icon will be visible. Else set 0, which is invisible, and we can see we get our desired result. If you notice when the icon is selected which is offsetting, we can also see the selected icon, but we don't want to see it. So add opacity to first icon and show it only when is selected is not true. Now if we reload the live preview, initially we don't see any icon for selected icon. So we can add another active icon and show it only when is selected is true and timer value is 0. Now when the icon reaches at max offset, we wanna scale it down to 0. So for that, add another active icon at the end. Then set scale effect to 0 when is selected is true, else 1. And also set offset Y to negative icon offset. Set linear animation with duration second duration and delay after first duration. These icons for unselected tab item is always visible, so add opacity and show only when is selected is true and timer value is greater than equal to first duration. And finally, we need to show the active icon with scale animation for selected tab item. So we can copy and paste from previous icon and reverse the scale. Then add linear animation with duration, third duration and delay with first duration plus second duration. Now if you notice when we tap on inactive icon, then the previously selected tab item is still visible. So we wanna show this only when is selected is true. Next, we need to show a circle shape behind the offset icon. So it will be easier to scale a circle shape from inside tab item view. So when we will show liquid animation, we will only offset the circle, but we won't scale that circle. If this doesn't make any sense, then don't worry, when we start building the liquid animation, everything will be clear. Add a private constant variable circle size inside custom tab bar, set it to 50, then pass it to tab item view. So behind all icons, add a circle shape with green color and set the frame width to circle size. I made a mistake, this should be semicolon not comma. Anyway, add a fixed offset to negative icon offset. Then add scale effect similar to the foreground icon. Set animation with duration, second duration, and delay with first duration. The offset modifier should be after the scale effect. We are going to show it when is selected is true and timer value is greater than equal to first duration. For some reasons, I can't record the scale animation for the offset icon. It appears to be not animating or happening very fast. Set the color to background color. Here is a simulator screen recording and you can see it's animating perfectly. We have to shrink each tab item width when they are tapped. Add a private state variable item tapped and set initial value to false. Then add a private computed property shrink item width. Then multiply each item view width with 0.7. Now pass these two arguments to bar item view. Inside the bar item view, set the width to shrink item width when is selected and item tapped is true, else item width. Then add animation modifier with curve is out with duration first duration. The value will be dynamic, so when the timer value is less than 0.6, which is first duration, use item tab, else is selected. So when the bar item view will shrink, it will animate with ease out curve with zero point 0.6 duration. When reverse, we will use spring animation. First, inside this if block, set item tab to true. And inside the listener closer, first check timer value is greater than equal to 0.6 seconds. Then set item tab to pause. Then call with animation and move this code inside. Then set the curve to interpolating spring and set the stiffness to 180 and damping to 12. If you notice, these are offsetting with fade animation. So on this icon, set scale effect to 1, and with that the bar item view animation is done for now. There is one issue, we will come back to it in the end. Now we are going to work on the background bar. First, add a computed property to get the shrinked bar width. Then set the width to shrinked bar width when item tapped is true, else device width. Then animation width ease out with 0.6 seconds duration. And don't worry about the bar alignment, this will be fixed soon. Now the bar shrink animation is working as we expect, but the growing animation is not spring animation. So add another bar, just copy and paste this. Remove the animation modifier and show it only when timer value is greater than equal to 0.6. And now you can see the bar spring animation. Finally, let's work on liquid effect. For this, we are going to use canvas. I already made a video on canvas, definitely watch that one. Anyway, add these properties which you are already familiar with. Then return canvas from the body. Then set the frame width to bar width and height to bar height plus icon offset. Return liquid effect view from custom tab bar. Put it inside this tag behind the background bar and pass the arguments. Now we have to set the alignment to bottom of the Z stack. And you can see the background bar alignment is also fixed. Here inside the symbol, add a rectangle, set width to shrink bar width and height to bar height, and add a tag tab bar. Then from inside the first drill enclosure, add reference and add these filters. Inside the draw layer, we are going to draw the background bar. At CG point, X is size.width by 2. And for Y, we need a computed property to extract the logic. Then set it to Y, and that will position this background exactly behind the actual background. If we comment them and change the color, we can see it. Similarly, we can also add a circle. To position it, we can set origin to CG point, then set X to item width minus circle size divided by 2. And store the Y position value in a computed property. Now I can't explain you this logic, otherwise this video will be even longer. Just know that we want the circle to put exactly behind the icon. Then set the size to circle size. Next, we have to add 4 such circles. Since we have 4 tab items, the X position of the circle must be dynamic and based on the item index. Add a method to hold the logic which will show the circle based on the item position. The first item ID has to be 0. Now instead of hard coding 4 circles, we are going to use for each. Use range start from 1 up to item count plus 1. Then use the index to add tag. To draw it, we can use for in loop. Then iterate from 1 to item counts. Then use the index to access each circle. Cut this logic and add it inside the for loop. Now when we call icon position x, we have to subtract 1 since our id starts from 1, but we must start position count from 0. Next, time to animate these circles. So for that, set offset y to negative icon offset when selected id is equal to this index and item tapped is true, else 0. Set ease out animation with 0.6 seconds duration. We can see the liquid effect, but the problem is we want to hide reverse animation. So we can only make it visible when timer value is less than 0.6 seconds. Change the color to bar background color. Then comment this code back. If we want to scroll from this area, we can't because this region is obscured by the liquid effect view. If we set a background color, then we can see it. To fix this, we can show this view only when the timer is running. Now we can scroll from this region. As far as building the actual tab bar is done, but there is still something more I want to show you. First, I'm going to update the colors. Then create a screens folder and add 4 screens. These are not related to this tutorial. You are on your own to create some dummy views. You can in fact copy and paste same views 4 times. Anyway, remove this scroll view, add a group, then use if block and show different views based on the ID. I hard coded everything. You probably wanna use for it. At this moment when we switch between views, there is no animation. What we are going to do is add transition. Now I can't explain why I chose this combination or this video is going to be very long. So just to know that we are using combination of scale and paid animation. For insertion we will use the same interpolating spring, and for removal use ease out curve. And with that our animation page switch transition is done. You already know that transition doesn't work on preview. So run on simulator. And yeah, make sure to add transition to each view, which I forget by the way. If you look very closely, there is a ghost effect when the icon starts to offset. This doesn't show in live preview. I don't know why it's only showing in simulator. It could be a bug. So if we remove this animation modifier, then that issue is resolved. But the shrink animation is still working for some weird reason, which is fine because this is what we want. But I don't know why. Again, it could be a bug or something. But generally, we need this animation modifier here. And here is the final screen recording from simulator since I couldn't record from my computer. And that's pretty much it for this tutorial. If you found this helpful, then please make sure to like and subscribe. If you have any question, leave a comment and also support me on Patreon. As always, thank you so much for watching this video and I will see you in the next one. Assalamu alaikum.